That's not going to work in this time. Anyway. Okay. Okay. Something. Right. That's better. Okay. We're looking at Acts chapter 6, verse 8 to 15-ish. And we're looking at Stephen, the Magnificent, because we call him, well, it's called Magnificent because of the way he faced death. And there's an example to all of us, despite his situation he found himself in. He was, it seemed like just a fairly ordinary Jewish person who, in this last hours of his life, faced the greatest intellects, if you will, in his land, and took them on and gave them a guided tour through their own history, and made them, hopefully, pointed at them and saying, you're still the same as you've been for centuries, still making the same mistakes, still going the same way. And because of the home truths that he was able to share with them, ultimately it ends his death at the end of the next chapter. So this is, last week we spent a little bit of time on the first aspect of chapter 6. We looked at how men were chosen to look after what could have been a very divisive situation in the congregation. The Hellenists needed help, and so they chose out certain men to look after that. And even religious errors, religious leaders were an error, can be taught the word of the Lord. We saw as a result of the church working together and preaching the gospel together that even the priests, the high priests and the leaders of the Jewish nation were beginning to listen to the gospel and become obedient to it, which is an important thing. There's hope for everybody, really. There will be those who will reject the word of God, no matter what the evidence, and we're going to see that in the next chapter also. And some people will be strongly affected by God's word and do something about it, and others will be strongly affected by God's word and do absolutely nothing. Okay, so we're going to have an introduction to this aspect of the stoning of Stephen. Who was Stephen? Well, we first met Stephen in the last chapter. One of the men chosen, full of the Spirit, wisdom, and a well-respected man. But not only was he dealing with the physical tables, we see him in this chapter moving on, and he also was involved in preaching and teaching. And as a basis of that then, an introduction to the book. First time the Jews, it's almost like they've tried to get Jesus and that didn't work. They tried with the apostles and that didn't work. So now they're coming down to the pecking order, seeing who else they can think is weak enough. It's almost like a bunch of lions going around a pride and looking at a herd or something and looking for the weak links to try and bring them down. And so they think perhaps it'd be easier than attacking an apostle of Christ. They would pick with this young man Stephen. Okay, he's young, he's involved with the church, but then again he can't be that brilliant, can he? And so under the Jewish law, speaking against Moses or the law is punishable by death. So in his comments, as you're going to see revealed, he stresses a lot puts a lot of emphasis on the history of the Jewish nation, and he brings out something like that, and also the teaching of Jesus. And what they're going to do is they're going to half hear his words, and they're going to twist his words, and try and use that as a form of say blaspheming. Verse 8 says, now Stephen, a man full of God's grace and power, did great wonders and miracles amongst the signs-minded people. Verse 3:13 says, for those who serve well as deacons gain a good standing for themselves and also great confidence in faith. So he must have done a good job in his service. That we said last week, he probably wasn't seen as a proper deacon, even though the word diakonos means servant, and it can be used either in a specific area, or it can be used, we're all servants, we're all deacons, we're all servants, as we serve one another and serve God. We can always, in Luke's section, we're all deacons. 2 Corinthians again commenting that, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weakness, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. He was a man who was willing to stand up and face the world with Christ, face his accusers with Christ. And Ephesians chapter 3 verse 7, of this gospel I was made a minister according to the gift of God's grace, which is given me by the working of his power. When we preach the gospel, God is with us, and God will be with us. This is the first bunch of people who he came up against. It's a bunch called the freedmen. Opposition arose, however, from a number of the synagogue of the freedmen, as it was called, Jews of Cyrene and Alexandria, as well as provinces of Cilicia and Asia. These men began to argue with Stephen, but they couldn't stand up against his wisdom or the spirit by which he spoke. Okay? So, the freedmen, these are individuals who are not natives usually of Jerusalem, though there's a bit of debate. Some people recognize there was possibly at least 2 synagogues in the area where these freedmen wouldn't be acceptable. The Jews really in some ways were very racist. These were technically Jews, but because they weren't in the eyes of maybe the truest Jew, a real Jew, though they were, they had to go off and do a thing on their own. I think sometimes, I've seen it and read about it in some parts of America, and probably in other parts of the world, where you get white congregations and black congregations. They may be both Christians, both believe exactly the same, but because of perhaps the different way they do things, one group will either look down on the other, or the other group will think they're superior or whatever, but they'll meet differently. And sometimes that can do with singing. You know, a lot of black guys have got, if you like, music in their soul. And a lot of us white guys, we've got to work at having music in our soul. And so they may be like a little bit more enthusiastic kind of worship, shall we say. Whereas we don't like emotion. You know, everything's got to be kind of kept under control. And so there's a natural, if you like, separation that takes place. But sadly, it's then sometimes it goes overboard where they're seen as not being different and inferior. So these individuals were not native Jews, and their zeal heightened when you travel to a special holy place. You see these pictures of Islam when they go to see Mecca, and they're beating the living daylights out of their, blood coming all down their back and everything as they walk down through the thing. They're wouldn't say nutcases, but they're certainly very involved with their religious experience. And sometimes when you do things special, you do feel more excited about your faith. So could you be more zealous than the people in Synagogue of Freedmen? Jews born in Israel were not free citizens of the Roman Empire, but Jews who belonged to the special synagogue were born in free cities. They had Roman citizenship by birth. Paul, who later became an apostle, might have been one of these, or must have been one of these. He was from Tarsus, city in Cilicia. He had Roman citizenship from birth, and Paul was one of the leaders and the murderer of Stephen, you could say. He certainly he didn't throw any stones, but he held the jackets for those who did. So great wonders and miraculous signs. The apostle had given Stephen the gift to be able to perform miraculous signs for the purpose of confirming the words that he spoke, and the apostle had given this power by laying hands upon him. And we saw that in the earlier part when they were set apart for the job that he initially set out for. The enemy of the church couldn't make a convincing argument against anything Stephen said, so as is usual, they plotted a dishonest trap for him, based on lies. Okay? I remember Frank years ago, we talked about 2 solicitors, an old solicitor and a young solicitor. The young solicitor had a very difficult case. He basically didn't have an argument. And the old solicitor said, look, go in there, slam your thing down on the desk and shout at the loudest top of your voice by overriding them by basically throwing abuse at them. That's not quite the way you call it, right? No.
But he had in his notes, point weak, shout louder.
Point weak, shout louder, see? Okay, if you don't have an argument, and quite often that happens with families, when one member of the family has a strong argument and the other one doesn't, what does the other one do? Shout over the top or deck him, one of the two, okay?
See the bit about laying on the hands stuff, right? See, it seems like most of the laying on the hands is for the ministry to be strong.
Usually laying on of hands, there's 2 areas laying on hands is used, primarily as a setting somebody apart for a particular thing. This is kind of usually done in a congregational setting, if you like, or a month. But the other main reason why you see laying on hands taking place is for the miraculous, to be given a gift. Because up to now in the book of Acts, especially in chapter 2, chapter 4 and chapter 5, we've seen that all the miracles and stuff in the text have been done by the apostles. But now we're moving into a wider area where the apostles can't be everywhere, and what they're doing is they're actually laying hands on people so they also can confirm the message that's been given, And we're going to see in the next couple of chapters how that's been used very effectively. And you think of Acts chapter 19, where Paul does the same thing to a bunch of people there.
No, I was at this other Christian place before, and they're doing the no laying on hands stuff, right?
Yeah.
And they've done it on me, yeah. And because other people going, you're trying to push me over, and no, like I don't mind something happening if I think it's going to happen, but if somebody's I can feel them doing that, and I don't know like that, no pushing against it. You know?
Some of the best ones, some of the very good ones, are a bit like the hypnotists you see up down centre, and they can actually, sometimes they don't even need to touch you. They just come close to your head, and you'll just fall over, because it's a similar technique. In the modern thing, if you've experienced quite a similar technique. I remember one faith healing campaign I went to, and this guy basically had about 14 people lined up, and he just went along, and they were just going down, like, people behind him catch them. You can see that all the time. But it's a hypnotic technique we use today, and that's slightly different from as a matter of fact, he had a son in that particular campaign. He had a son, and he was actually teaching his son how to do it, and how to use the gift. And I said to him, surely if it's a gift from God, you don't need to teach him, because it's from God. But he was training his son how to do this. But it's a different scenario from what you get here in these first chapters.
It seems like that's the right way of doing it. Do you know what I mean? No.
It is if you've got a gift to give. This is the problem. In the apostles, all the way through the book of Acts, you're going to see that the miraculous was passed on by the laying on of hands. And we're going to see actually in the next chapter, once we get to Stephen, we'll get to chapter 8, that'll be even more clear, because Simon will be involved, and he sees that these two apostles come down from Jerusalem to pass on the gift, and he wants to buy it so he can use it. So we'll deal a bit more with that when we get to that passage. Okay? So won't forget about it, because I know it's in the notes already, because I've done that one. Also, so this power, given them this power by laying out hands. Enemies of the church couldn't stand against. Just what he had to say was just so powerful they couldn't stand against him. So they had to think of a way of cutting his feet from under him, and all they could do is lie. So they were unable to overcome on the basis of facts. Stephen was a powerful proclaimer of the gospel. He was not numbered with the apostles, but he did proclaim the gospel in the open square. And this is an Old Testament, one of the Ten Commandments. They shall not bear false witness against a neighbour. And this is what they're going to do to him. These are religious leaders actually going to falsely accuse Stephen, and ultimately end up killing Stephen on the back of their accusations. So they're wrong in their own light. The secret persuaded some men to say, we have heard Stephen speak words of blasphemy against Moses and against God. So there's the rumour that they want these guys to spread, that Stephen is telling lies. He's blaspheming God, because ultimately they want to use the blasphemy was one of the things the death penalty carried. And that's one of the reasons why they could stone a person, because he was blaspheming. But before they could do that, they've got to set him up, and that's what they're going to do. So they stirred up the people and the elders and teachers of the law. They seized Stephen and brought him before the Sanhedrin. These men intentionally lie and deceive to get the outcome they desire. They do all of this in the name of God. That's the, when you think about it, that's the real tragedy. They're doing this because of their zeal for God. They're willing to not only set somebody up, but they're willing to commit murder, which effectively is, and they're doing it in the name of God. That's quite a powerful thing, that. Matthew, now the chief priest and the whole council were seeking false testimony against Jesus. Exactly the same thing happened to Jesus. And when they couldn't silence Jesus, they brought false charges against him. What's the passage you said about Stephen? Couldn't silence him, bring false charges against him. It's almost like a common trait. They've got no conscience about it, so they're doing the same thing to Stephen. The council probably refers to the Sanhedrin. Remember, we talked about the Sanhedrin before, an influential body. Matter of fact, in chapter 7 and 8, you're going to see the real instigators, the real guys who are against the church, move from the Sanhedrin bunch into the actual Pharisees' bunch themselves. So some of the religious leaders accused Stephen of blasphemy. Blasphemy against Moses, there's the first charge. He's blaspheming against Moses, and blasphemy against the holy place, the temple, and, of course, when we deal with the temple, the law, blasphemy against the law. He says, they say he wants to change the customs of Moses, that Moses delivered. Well, technically that's true, because Jesus fulfilled the law. The customs were going to change. The whole Jewish nation was going to change. The worship system was going to change. So technically, yes, he was teaching that what Moses said was going to be changed, but as it said in Luke 24, it's not to be changed because they feel like changing it. It's changed because it's been fulfilled in Jesus. Its time has finished, and therefore it's a different ballgame. So, give me now up to thy will by a verse 3, for false witnesses have risen up against me. They breathe out violence. Malicious witnesses rise up. They ask me of things I do not know. This is obviously talking about Jesus. This is exactly what they did to Jesus. And the charge even was the same. Remember what Jesus says? I'll destroy this temple and I'll raise it up in 3 days. He's talking about the temple of his body. And they say, he's talking about destroying the temple. Okay? So, do they have more love for the building than they do for God? That's what part of the accusation are true and what parts are false, okay? The real key to a lot of this is the half-truth. Sometimes the worst lies they sound right, or they've got part truth in them, or somebody's being economical with the truth, okay? And they are the worst ones to actually counteract. Because you can't turn around and say, that's lies. Jesus didn't say, you've got to change everything that Moses said. But it's technically half true, because Jesus said, well, I've come to fulfill everything Moses said, and by the fulfillment of that, things are going to change. Okay? So half-truths are sometimes harder to deal with, harder to fight against than proper truths. So the law of Moses said no accusation of a crime could be substantiated against a person except the testimony of at least 2 eyewitnesses. They had to get at least 2 false witnesses to testify in the court, Sanhedrin against Stephen. Now, though the law prescribed the death penalty for those bearing false witness, these men were willing to break their law and risk death themselves in order to get rid of Stephen. And remember who they're doing it on behalf of: the Jewish leaders themselves, the law keepers, the lawgivers. They're going to break the law in order to enforce the law to bring somebody down. This is just hypocrisy and everything else at the highest level. You know, if they saw it happen to somebody lower down the pecking order, they say, oh, isn't that terrible? Isn't that terrible? And here they're doing exactly the same thing themselves. You see a reflection of that in Romans chapter 2, in part of Paul's accusation to them. Though they had the law, they didn't keep the law. Okay, so the same thing happened to Jesus. False witnesses must have known that would be protected by this. Is the Jewish authorities must have said to false witnesses, I know you're going to be false witnesses, but don't worry about it, because we will protect you from the law. One law for one and one law for another. God doesn't always prevent evildoers from carrying their evil plans. Remember Ahab's murder of innocent before. Frank said last week, remember how James was killed, but yet Peter and Paul in different instances have been spared. And Stephen is killed, and yet there's other people who are doing, Philip later on, they're doing something similar, and he gets spared. So God doesn't always step in. And some people say, you know, why doesn't God prevent suffering? You know, here's somebody walking along the street, and without even thinking, maybe he was thinking about religious things, he turns into the street, walks straight in front of a bus. And all of a sudden, a big hand comes out of the sky, grabs him and pulls him back on the path. God intervened. Isn't that wonderful? You imagine living your life not knowing whether every step you took, somebody was going to grab you by the scruff of the neck and drag you out of the way. You couldn't live like that. Okay? God's not going to step in those kind of situations in that kind of way. And if you're stupid enough to walk in front of a bus, the law of gravity which God instigated says that it will hit you, and it will hit you hard, and you will suffer the consequences of your action. So you've got to be aware of something like that. Now he's a good looking guy, isn't he? Okay, that's the face of glory. I've heard him say that Jesus of Nazareth would destroy his place and change the custom Moses handed down to us. All who were sitting in the Sanhedrin looked intently at Stephen, and they saw that his face was like the face of an angel. Before their very presence, there was something changed and transformed about the face of this man, okay, which is an interesting concept. We'll come back to that in a second. The face of glory, goodness. All who were sitting in the Old Testament tells the story of Moses' face glowing with radiance when he came down from Sinai, right at the tabernacle after being in the presence of the angel who represented God. Okay? So, and Hebrew writer talks about something similar. The face of glory. All who were sitting, got that one. It's a duplicate. That's the next one. Okay, sorry about that. Men who you teach on heaven, this is interesting. Charles Spurgeon, he said, men, when you teach on heaven, let there always be a glow on your face, a gleam in your eye, and a grin on your lips. When you teach on hell, the normal face will do fine. Good comment. He's been dead over, how long, 100 years?
Yes, easily.
Okay. Stephen, the perfect peace in the face of the charges brought against him. Ecclesiastes, who is like the wise? Who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the hardness of his face is changed. That's just because I had a wash today. Okay? A man's wisdom makes his face shine. Isn't that good? It is with full confidence Stephen faced his accusers. I just speak up something. The phenomenon the angelic face of Stephen should have been a sign to these Jews that Stephen had a direct connection with God at this point. Okay, something different about this guy. Are we doing the right thing? I don't think it's too far-fetched to think at the moment God's Spirit took over for Stephen and guided him through his defence and ultimately his death. Okay, he was dying. Stephen was given a vision of heaven, and Jesus was there waiting for him. Not a bad way to die. Okay. Sometimes when we face some of the things in earth, we're not sure about things. We haven't got a lot of confidence in things. He, in his debate with these people, recognised just before they stoned him that Christ was there in a very special way, rooting for him. Okay, he had a home to go to, and so Paul says the trials of this world. It doesn't say that. It says something similar. The trials of this world are nothing compared with the glory that awaits us. Okay, if we can live our lives understanding that and believing that, it'll make a difference in the way we do things. Okay. All right. Stephen's defense. When the high priest asked him, "Are these charges true?" to this he replied, "Brothers and fathers, listen to me. The God of glory appeared to your father Abraham while he was still in Mesopotamia, before he lived in Haran. Leave your country and your people, God said, and go to the land I will show you." If we preached like Stephen did regularly, probably the congregation would get sick of us, because what he's going to start on here, he's going to take the Jews right from Abraham all the way through the history until, and you are just like Nathan with David, thou art a man at the end. Okay, he's going to give them a quick tour through their history, and yes, okay. Please don't follow that, Stephen. Okay, Stephen calls them brothers and fathers. So he's from the same Jewish background. Okay, he's saying, I'm identified. What I'm going to talk about is my history as well as your history. Okay, this is something we have in common, and I've understood something about that, and I want you to understand something about that. Okay, so he tries to build a bridge between them. I'll forget about that one. And at the end of the day, really, because he knows when he's surrounded, you imagine this poor guy, well, not poor guy, because he's confident, God's on his side, but he's in the midst of at least probably 70 plus people, and every one of them are against him. Every one of them are against him. Every one of them are going to listen to everything else he has to say and be ready to try to pull it to pieces. And yet he stands up there with courage, and he's going to turn around and say to them, you guys are no better than all this history has gone before you. They killed the prophets in times past, they're going to do exactly the same thing today. So technically he knew he was going to face death. Stephen's defense wasn't really a defense at all. He knew he was doomed to death. It was a foregone conclusion. They've spiked the witnesses, they've spiked what the witnesses have said, and they're standing there glowering down at him, listening to what he has to say, but they're not listening. They're almost, you could almost see half of them closing their ear. We don't want to hear this, because they've already decided. This is not a jury. They've already decided this man is going to die.
He's not doomed to die, he's doomed to death.
Doomed to death. Doomed to die? Well, they're going to put him to death.
Yeah.
Doomed to death? Doomed to die? I don't know. We can find out that later. This opportunity to condemn his judges for long history of abuse of God's prophets and a constant refusal to seek God's will and obey him. So he's going to take the opportunity. They're not going to let him off. So he's going to say what he's going to say before they finish him off. Okay? He's doomed. He's doomed. Who used to do that? Anyway, he shows God always trying to win the trust and obedience, but he failed. Is it handy? Something like that.
The Loading Dance Army.
Oh, that's what it was. The
John Mercy.
The Scotsman.
The Scotsman, yeah, doomed. But he had to fail because he'd always refused to obey. Okay. Stephen here begins a retelling of the history of Israel. Why is a retelling of the history of Israel a defense of Christian teaching? Sometimes we talk about we're New Testament Christians, but we're embedded in, where our foundation is the whole Jewish nation. God, right through the beginning of time, chose a nation to be an example to the others around them, in that sense, taking up that lately, and be an example that they are God's people. And at one time when they were going really bad, he says the only thing that kept you going was the fact that I had a plan for you for the future. Because you were rubbish as a nation, and like many of the nations round about, you could have gone the same way. But I kept you in existence for the purpose of bringing about the Messiah. Okay? So we stand here today, and Paul in Romans chapters 9 to 11, he does a similar type of thing. We need to thank God for the Jewish nation that existed back then, that enabled God to bring about the Messiah to die on our behalf. Because without Jesus dying, he was Jewish, we couldn't have salvation. So we need to be, and Paul, of course, goes on to say that we need to, any Jew we come into contact with, we need to share the gospel with them, so he can have what we have, because they have lost sight of what they were all about. Okay, Stephen in defense cites some key points in Israel's history. Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, the selling of Joseph to Egypt, the oppression of the Israelites in the 40-year wandering in the wilderness. Stephen expanded upon the disobedience of the Israelites when they rejected Moses and the law given to them by God. And there's Abraham's journey or of the Chaldees. It's interesting. I think I've got it on here. But in Genesis, no, I won't say that. I might say that. Frank will pick me up on that. Whatever I was going to say, Frank will pick me up on. Stephen recounts the Old Testament from the call of Abraham to this very day. He begins with God's call to Abraham while he was still in Ur. The story in the Old Testament doesn't make it very clear just where Abraham had been when God first called him. Possibly.
Yeah, that's right. It was in Ur of the Chaldees.
Okay.
Ur is the
Stephen says he was in Ur when God called him.
The word Ur means city. He was in the city of the Chaldees. That's where he was.
Back in chapter 12 of Genesis.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's why it's called Abraham the Hebrew. The word Hebrew means the one who crossed over. Over Mesopotamia.
So he left the land of the Chaldees and settled in Haran after the death of his father. God sent him to this land where you are now living, so he crossed over from that land. He gave him no inheritance there, not even a foot of ground, but God promised him that he and his descendants after him would possess the land, even though at that time Abraham had no children, and he's getting old. There's a question mark in there, but we'll leave that. God predicted slavery in Egypt. God spoke of this: your descendants will be strangers in a country not their own. They'll be enslaved and mistreated 400 years. And I'll punish the nation that served as slaves. God said, and afterwards they'll come out of that country and worship me in this place. Again, there's something in there, but I'm not going to pick it up tonight. Okay? But this helps us understand what would happen. Promised to Abraham a nation to come, a sojourn in a foreign land in bondage, delivered a nation judged, serve God in this place. fulfillment of the promise. The patriarchs were born through Isaac, who was the son. Joseph leads his family to Egypt, oppression in Egypt. Moses brought them out with power, and he gave them the law. And the tabernacle turned into the temple, turned into the land eventually built by Solomon. So the tabernacle and then the temple. So the charges are that you are changing Moses, our relationship with Moses and the law, and also you're changing the place, the land and the temple. This place is important to God. Remember what Jesus said in John chapter 4? He says, there'll come a time when people worship in spirit and in truth. You won't worship in this temple or that temple. Okay, you can worship God anywhere. You take a picnic lunch up to the top of the hills in the Lake District, you can worship God on top of the hills. And it'll be acceptable to Him. Okay? Because we are the temple of God. His people are now the temple of God. Not a physical building. We are the church. The body of Christ. So, it's interesting. Joseph leads his family to Egypt. He was rejected by his brethren. He went away for a while, exalted by God, and appeared again as a Saviour. Most of us are familiar with the story of Joseph and his technical dream code, or the modern version goes. And a similar thing with Moses. Moses brought him out with power. He gave him the law. He was rejected by his brethren. He went away for a while. He selected and made a ruler by God, and appeared again as Saviour and a father of disobedience to the law. It's interesting in God stepping into humanity down through time, how many parallels appear in different people's lives. Okay, in actual fact, in the book of Acts, it's amazing how many parallels. I'm probably not going to bring it out, but it might be how many parallels between what happens under Peter in the first part of the book of Acts and what happens with Paul in the second part of the book of Acts. There's lots of little parallels going on. But here's good old Joseph. Well, it's not actually a guy beating up the two Hebrews. And some put the period of enslavement. Frank will tell us the correctness, give us the right time here. Some put the period of enslavement to Israel beginning sometime after the death of Joseph, according to one estimate of biblical chronology. Joseph died in 1590 BC, adding 400 years to that would put it in Exodus about 1190 BC. But others date the period of enslavement from the time of Israel entering Egypt and put the date around 1870 BC, and that would put the Exodus at 1476. And the prophet will now, the oracle of God will now speak. Any good, Frank? Which one would you go for? None of them.
I would go for the later one, for the bottom one.
The bottom one.
Yeah,
1476.
The Exodus, yes.
Now you see, he was there. Okay. Okay. I think we'll stop it actually. We'll stop. Shall we do one more?
Yeah.
The covenant. Okay. Then he gave Abraham the covenant of circumcision. Abraham became the father of Isaac and circumcised him 8 days after his birth. Later Isaac became the father of Jacob. Jacob became the father of 12 patriarchs. There you have the individual who becomes a family, who ultimately becomes the Jewish nation, the 12 tribes of Jacob's sons. Okay. And it's interesting that on the other side of that, through Esau, are all the other mob that you see, the sons of Jacob, the Jews in Israel, are busy fighting off all the other sons of Esau all around them. There's something like 28 nations or something around the Jews. And they're all brothers. They all have the same, maybe that's why they're the same trouble. These brothers can't agree. Okay, that's maybe something like that. Now I thought this was interesting. This is interesting, this old painting. Has anybody spot anything wrong with it? Here's Jesus being circumcised the 8th day. Who's around him, according to the painting? Would it be 3 wise men? And if it is 3 wise men, what the earth are they doing there within 8 days of Jesus being born? Because they didn't turn up for almost 2 years later.
Are they supposed to be the 3 wise men?
I think so. One's got a crown in the back, and this one's got a, I don't know, maybe he's bringing a couple of chickens to eat. I don't know what he's doing.
They never had electricity either.
But, yeah. They what?
They never had electricity
No,
either.
no. I especially see a special light thrown in. Okay, but it's interesting because I was just reading something recently about all our Christmas cards and stuff like that. A lot of them have got, if they are religious, they're getting worse. They're not getting any religious these days, are you? You get lucky to find a religious Christmas card these days. Anyway, if you are religious, you usually find the wise men, 3 of them, are all there at the birth of Jesus. Of course, that didn't happen. And that's why Herod killed all children up to 2 years old. he wasn't letting any escape his net. He didn't know exactly when the day that he was born, but he knew he must be under 2 years old, and so he wiped out a whole bunch of kids who were under 2 years old just to catch Jesus in the trap. But of course, Jesus, his father knew about it, father and mother knew about it, and shot off before he got a chance to kill him. So
How many people are there, Graham?
well, I see one. I would assume this guy. He's got a crown thing in the back, and there's another guy here,
2.
and there's this guy here. That'd be a 3, I would think. I'm not too sure about this one here. He's probably a cow.
Well, what about Mary and Joseph put him in there, wouldn't they?
Well, one of them may be Joseph.
Well, where's Mary then?
That's her. I would assume this is her.
That's right. And that, oh.
And there's the baby.
That's
not a very good picture. Eh?
in front of him must be the priest doing the job.
Well, could be. So the 3 guys around the outside, maybe the wise men.
So you have 3. You should have 6. You should have 6 people then if they're the 3 wise men. You've got Mary and Joseph and the priest.
Well, this guy, he's definitely wearing the crown. The guy in the back.
There's only 5 people there.
2, 3, 4. I'm not sure. I think this may be the head of another one here, Frank.
Oh, is that what? I thought that might have been an angel with a halo.
Oh, it's maybe the mistletoe for the Christmas tree.
And we dug that hole deep enough.
Yeah, okay. Anyway, 2 seconds more after this stuff. Okay, circumcision. Even though the Arabs are also descended from Abraham, also circumcised, the Jews always looked upon circumcision as a sign of their connection to God as a covenant. The Philistines were also circumcised. The circumcision also had a spiritual meaning as well, we see at the end of Stephen's speech. Okay, we'll stop at the story of Joseph, okay? Any questions? Clear as mud, can't be bad.
But see, now he said, is it 3 kings come?
Yes.
Yeah. And then you said the 3 wise men.
No,
They
the 3 kings.
thing.
Yeah, historically, they've actually, they started off with 3 wise men. The Bible doesn't start off with 3 wise men, but the Bible starts with 3 gifts. And then the illusion is made, if there are only 3 gifts, there must be 3 people. And therefore you've got 3 wise men. And then from there you've got, over time, they become kings. And then over time you give them names.
The shepherds come, didn't they?
Oh, there's lots of other things happen in between. Yeah. In fact, it's unlikely for 3 guys to travel by themselves. We're talking about probably if they're wise men, they were probably traveling at quite a large cavalcade.
Maybe astronomers.
Astronomers, yeah.
Yes.
They were astronomers. Astronomer royal, wise men.
It was interesting
Article.
On the radio today. It was just being released about the Second World War. Our government actually employed astronomers to study what his astronomers were studying, because he wouldn't make a move
without getting the right dates to see when the assault was going to come.
Yeah.
Well, the funny thing, I mean, you talk about mess. You know, you've got Bush, not Bush, Reagan. Is a woman who was telling, oh, you shouldn't do that today. You know, dear. Anyway, we'll leave it at that. Frank, lead us to what prayer.
Loving Father, again we're grateful for the opportunity of being here tonight to